Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Plotlines. I'm your host, Connor, and today we're going to be continuing our movie discussion series with Supreme Pontiff Jeff. How you doing, Jeff?
Hey Connor, I'm doing really well, and I'm really excited to be on here. I always love our discussions, and this is one of my favorite movies. So excited to be here and to be chatting about A Few Good Men.
Yes, we'll be chatting about Few Good Men and my current love-hate relationship with it,
Fair
um,
enough.
which is basically every movie reviewing these days. We were even just talking about like our complaints with Lord of the Rings,
hmm
and it's like the more you know, the more picky you become, the more you're able to sort of point out the weaknesses and the frustrations you have with a movie.
Yeah, and Peter Jackson's trilogy is a masterpiece, and it's not going to be topped. That doesn't mean it's not without fault. There's no such thing as a perfect movie, especially like you said, coming out these days.
Yeah. Well, never say never about a future movie. It could be topped one day. It just is not this day. Yes.
Nice.
Exactly. Well, before we get into our discussion of Few Good Men, I want to make a quick announcement about the future of my work and plot lines in general. I am starting a Substack on Monday. So this coming Monday, I will be releasing articles. The plan will be at least 5 articles per week. Some of those will be paid articles. So if you want to support this channel, if you've enjoyed this content I provide and want a way to make this more financially feasible for me to continue and to grow and just generally improve my work, and maybe grow, because I have a lot of ambitions for what I'd like the future to hold for my work and collaborations and stuff like that, and even maybe building an organization of some sort that broadens the subjects that we discuss or that I discuss, and bring allows people that may not have the ability to, work, uh, put all their time into this type of work, allow them to do that. Because if we can build a financially stable organization, then people can actually give up their day jobs, which would be fantastic. But that's just the future, and I would really appreciate any support. So that will be on Substack, and just pay attention to my YouTube page and my X account. There'll be more information coming in the future. So there'll be some articles that will be free, some articles that will be paid. And if you have any other suggestions about how I might, or, bonuses that people might get, if they support the channel and support the Substack, I'd really appreciate that. So,
That's a really exciting development. I'm curious, what do you think the common thread or types of themes are going to be for your articles?
well, w- at the current stage, I want to sort of have like at least a political article, a um fiction article, so sort of like this, but just me, like sort of
Mhm.
a written review of, say, A Few Good Men. Like I might release another, so we'll discuss it here, but I might write a full review of my own on my Substack, and then, something either historical or religious as a third, and then the 2 articles that will probably be behind the paywall could be from any of those organizations, or not organizations, what the heck, topics.
Yep.
um I'm going to call the Substack Palantir's Hope, which is a reference to the King Tar Palantir, which I repeat myself because King and Tar mean the same thing. Tar Palantir of Numenor. He was the last good king of Numenor, and he was farsighted, and that's what Palantir means, farsighted. So I want to provide people, and I'm going to write an article basically explaining the purpose of the Substack, but I want to provide people the tools and the, um, sort of the ideas that might provide a off ramp for our civilization into a safer waters, into returning to, uh, you know, good leadership, um, good civilization instead of this collapsing civilization that will lead to our own Alabeth, our own downfall, if
Mhm.
uh, if we um, if we continue on the way we are continuing.
Makes sense. Well, I'm excited to get to read some articles from you.
Appreciate that, Jeff. Thank you. But yeah, so let's get started with A Few Good Men. Um, so this is an Aaron Sorkin movie. He wrote it. Now, Aaron Sorkin, in my opinion, is an incredible writer, but he is an idealistic libtard. Is the best way I can explain him. He is uh, he uses his own experience, obviously, to depict who the good guys are, who the bad guys are, and he has an extraordinary bent that I think uh, is subtle, actually, somewhat subtle to the non focused eye.
Mhm.
If you're not really paying attention, if you're just looking for an entertaining movie, I think Aaron Sorkin is his written work is tremendous. It's just also perverted. What do you think about that?
I think that that's fair. I think that it's really important. Like honestly, that's why I love doing these types of shows. Is like my what I come back to is we should be digesting media, not just consuming it. Not just having everything come in, but actually let it stew. And it's okay to have things that we're watching that aren't perfect, but morally speaking, but we have to be able to recognize and then reject what is wrong. If we're just letting it come into us, we're not thinking critically. That's how you end up with people being okay with Game of Thrones being one of the most popular shows of this millennium. Um, it starts off with just allowing little pieces of subtle poison to get into our system that we then tolerate what's just outright evil. Um, so I agree. I think this is a good movie that has it is very entertaining, like you said, and there is good that can be found in it, but you have to also recognize that subtle poison, like you said, and reject it. Otherwise, it continues further on down the line.
Yes, and I think this movie might be the first where Jeff and I actually disagree on some elements. And I want to say, first of all, I'm no military guy. I have no experience with the military. I have no idea how the best way to run a military is, because Few Good Men takes place basically in the Marines and in the Navy and in the context of that. So I'm not really saying I'm reserving judgment on some
Mhm.
of the ways that they go about things, because I really don't know the best way. I don't know what they should be doing.
That's completely fair, but I think we can also we can discuss separate from the prudence of the best way in a particular situation. We can still look at the morality of what each of the characters was doing in this movie.
Okay, well let's start off with sort of the premise.
Hmm.
The premise is actually based on a true story,
Hmm.
though this story has been overblown, in my opinion, and used for I think political purposes. Um, I think Aaron Sorkin saw this or heard of this kind of concept and thought this is a perfect way of sort of um, attacking his enemies, or
Hmm.
those that he perceives to be his enemies,
Okay.
which are sort of the Jessup character. The Jessup
Yeah.
character is his ultimate enemy. It's he's
Yes.
sort of it's the old guard, the old military guard who has, I would say, not maybe classical Protestant morality, classical Protestant ethic, and he sees that as an affront to what he wants the world to look like.
Hmm.
So the story, the true story, though it's not for sure exactly, all the details I'm not exactly sure about, but the story is that there was a it was basically what amounts to a code red in which is where the uh, where 10 uh, military officers took it into their hands to sort of punish one of their own in their own unit. And what happens is that the in the process the the sorry their what
The
would be the right
soldier.
there's the soldier, sorry, the soldier in their unit that they're reprimanding uh gets, you know, taken to the hospital, and he actually recovers. So that's the big difference between the movie and reality, is which also I do find suspicious. The way they sort of say that the guy dies, he just kind of seems to die, in my opinion, slightly out of nowhere, which we're gonna get to that in the doctor.
Hmm.
But uh, he doesn't die. These 10 soldiers go on trial. Well, not trial. They're charged with something. I can't remember if what it exactly was. Two of them take it to trial. So we've got the two that carries on into the movie, but 8 of them take a plea bargain of some sort, and then 2 go to trial, and then it goes all the way down to just assault. The only thing that they're convicted of is assault, and uh, they serve like 6 months or something, and then they actually, I think, rejoin their unit afterwards and finish their time in the military. So first of all, what do you think? And sort of their argument was that they were ordered to do this. That was their argument. So it was based on the same thing. So what do you think about sort of the reality versus the movie?
So I definitely can see why, like, for the sake of um, making it an entertaining movie, the stakes are raised quite a bit when
Yes.
somebody dies versus just somebody gets sent to the hospital. And it wouldn't, I think you can make the argument that it makes sense to elevate that so that, they start off with, him, like Kaffee saying, I'm going to get him reduce it to 20 years, then I'm going to get him to reduce it to 12 and then down to 6 months. And like just always looking for that plea bargain.
Mhm.
So I can understand why they did that. Also, having it be just the two men that were actually going to trial versus all of the rest, it gives it more dramatic weight to have it be focused on individuals rather than an entire group. So,
Well, yeah,
you can make,
having people not having there not be 8 people saying, "Oh no, I'll take the plea bargain."
yeah,
Like, that lessens the importance of the 2 other guys. It makes them actually make them seem, unnecessarily, you know,
rigid.
rigid, yes.
Yeah. So I just, from a story perspective, I can understand why those changes were made. They're much more reasonable than Gandalf having his staff broken by the Witch King of Angmar.
I love how we're just gonna add little, things about, Lord of the Rings in this episode,
Why not?
I guess. We're gonna
Um,
yeah.
yeah, so that's my thought. I can see why those changes were made.
I don't think it serves the purpose. If they had just done the movie based on the actual event, and if they had taken the event as is, I don't think it would serve the purposes that Sorkin is trying to get across. Which is why I
Okay.
say that that story is being used and made into sort of a political thing.
Okay, so you can save it for later, but what do you think Sorkin is trying to get across then?
I think so he's basically taking sort of his heroes tend to be either Jewish, Catholic, or women. And there are only three types of or sorry, only one type of each of the three. Like the kinds of Catholics he uses are always liberal ones, which the West Wing is a perfect example of that.
Yeah.
The only kind of woman he has is a feminist, which uh, I don't even Joanne really
Yeah.
personifies,
Hmm.
um, and also very liberal Jewish uh, people as well, which uh, what's his name?
Weinberg.
Weinberg represents that, which I believe the play has a lot more, emphasis on that. Emphasis on Judaism and stuff like that, which
Mm.
Aaron Sorkin himself is a Jew. So it makes sense. And I Tom Cruise's character is kind of the odd man out basically in this. But he is a Harvard grad. He is the elite. Sorkin has this fondness for the liberal elite when it comes to um, like them being smart and everyone else is dumb.
Hmm.
Like uh, Jessup, Kendrick. They're all like sort of hicks. They're all the pathetic men, but they're just brash because of they're hiding their insecurities or whatever. Like they are um they are just they feel threatened by the liberal elite, so they are trying to resist them. But Sorkin sees them as impeding progress.
Well, what would you say about Kevin Bacon's character, the prosecuting attorney? Because
Kevin Bacon,
he's a Marine, and he's not shown as being an elite Harvard grad or anything, but he's shown as very intelligent and almost equal to Tom Cruise's character.
he's the only good Republican.
Okay.
So Sorkin has a type, which the good Republican type.
Mm.
The good Republican type is one that will sell out all every other Republican. Basically, he's Mitt Romney. He will sell
Okay.
out every Republican in order to please um, the smart liberal elite.
Mm.
And he comes out as very witty, like they're very strong. They tend to be pro-choice. So like pro-choice, like basically a libertarian sort of,
Hmm.
and not even a principled libertarian, but a more libertarian. Basically, just saying, "I want to be left alone" type of Republican. Um,
Yeah.
I'm
And
okay with
he,
everyone else's livelihoods and like however they want to live. I'm just doing my job. I have respect for the office. He's warning Caffey. He wants don't lump me in with Jessup and Kendrick and all the rest of them. Like he is completely sort of the sellout Republican.
gotcha.
Not that these are Republicans and the other ones are Democrats necessarily. The point is just that's how they map on. I
Hmm.
think in Sorkin's head and in my own as well.
Gotcha. Okay. I can see that.
And the doctor is Fauci.
Yeah. He even looks like him.
Like it's so weird because I think sort of the doctor gets a pass. Well, so they make an implication that, and we're kind of getting off track. I think a lot of people know the movie, so I don't think we need to really go through every aspect of it. But the doctor, he first, the two things that he kind of does is he clears the guy who is basically having shortness of breath. He's I don't remember all of his symptoms, but he has a bunch of these symptoms:
Fatigue,
fatigue,
dizziness.
dizziness, yes. All these things that are holding him back as from being a good Marine, and it leads him to being sort of punished for going outside command to sort of try and get out of uh, Cuba. He's stationed in Guantanamo Bay, Cuba, and he's trying to get away. And actually, interesting enough, the main soldier, who's sort of Dawson, who's the guy who's on trial for his murder, had been basically protecting him more or
Hmm.
less. And it seems like the thing that took him from, willing to do the code red to not wanting him to be code redded, if that's a verb, if I can
Yeah,
make that a verb, and to being the one who does the code red is merely being the one who's directly ordered to do so.
yeah.
But yeah, anyways, it seems a little odd that the guy who was directly ordered to do so went as far as he did, that would cause the situation that would lead to the guy's death. You think he'd be nicer about it? I don't know. That's just me. It's not like Kendrick was there. Like, it's kind of weird. I don't know. Maybe it's just all about orders, following orders, doing exactly what you're told to do, and how you're
Well,
told to do it.
well,
Which,
ultimately, what they were going to do, and they were just shutting him up and tying his hands and feet together so he couldn't fight.
yeah.
Ultimately, all they were going to do was shave his head.
Yes, that's true. You're right. But I think the problem is that they stuck a rag down his throat.
Well, they stuck it in his mouth, and then like it accidentally went too far. He couldn't breathe. That started the acidosis. He started coughing up blood.
Isn't the point also that is it that it may not have been what the doctor says it was, and that it was just caused by whatever underlying health problem he had?
Well, ultimately, the argument that was made is that he had a coronary condition, and that made it so that lactic acidosis started so much
Okay.
faster than otherwise it would have, because he said usually that would take 20 to 30 minutes for lactic acidosis to, kick in like that.
Yes. Okay. Yes. Good point. Anyways, one of the things the doctor, you know, doesn't get a lot of so the doctor had cleared him for service, right?
Yep.
That's the first big problem.
Well, and after all of that, so yes, he got the clean bill of health. And then when he was complaining about all of these things, he was put on restricted duty, which just meant that he couldn't run over 5 miles for 1 week. That was it.
So
Like
it seems
that's
like the doctor really dropped the ball here. Uh
yes,
Utterly. And then and then it's implied or accused that, at least I think, uh Joe, the who's internal affairs, um basically thinks Jessup coerced the doctor into saying that it was poison. Now there's no real
yes.
evidence to that.
Well, the main it's the timeline that is condemning. Because at
Maybe, but
3, he said he couldn't figure out what it was, and then 2 hours later, he said it was poison, and the argument basically would be if Jessup did go and talk to him, he would say, "Okay, like, this looks like you did screw up, so the only way you can protect yourself is you have to say it was poison."
okay.
Or, it's possible that he just figured that out on his own and
Well,
changed his
that's
mind.
that's what I was thinking. I'm thinking it's more logical that the doctor would be fearing for his own career anyways. I don't think it Jessup has to be the one that made the doctor do this.
That's fair.
At least
I do believe it says that he did meet with Jessup in between,
yes, but
but you're right. It very much might have just been him covering his own tail.
that just seems extremely circumstantial. like evidence. Like
Yeah.
the doctor has the motive. It
Yeah.
like he has no it we have no other evidence. It's just an idea that Joanne throws out there.
Yeah. No, I think that that's a very fair point.
I like and the doctor already missed it. So the doctor is supposed to be an expert, which I love that. Like it's one of those things that I do really appreciate about the movie, even though it was sort of ahead of its time in that.
Mhm.
But it was accidental. Like Aaron Sorkin would never write it that way, I think today.
That's fair.
He would
Yeah.
never like try and throw the doctor under the bus. And this is the problem with sort of with progressive liberalism, with just liberalism in general. You never know where it's heading when you're in, because this is the 90s, I think,
Yeah, early 90s.
early 90s. You never know where liberalism is going in the early 90s. You can
Yeah.
kind of map it out with some ideas, but you never know where like liberals will take it to enforce their agenda.
Sure.
Because is it really important that we don't question medical experts? Not from like a liberal principle, but in the sense that liberals want to get what they want, and how they get that. That is where you can't question the experts.
Yeah. Agreed.
So he couldn't foresee COVID. He couldn't have foreseen the scandals that would come out. He couldn't foresee Fauci, even though he basically predicts Fauci in the movie. Anyways,
Yeah.
I I consider the doctor to be the biggest villain because I don't see Jessup necessarily. I don't think there's enough proof that Jessup uh made the doctor say what he said. Because the only reason why the two guys are really on trial for murder, first of all, like they might be on trial for something else, for something much lesser, right?
Mhm.
Like in real life, like they might have been on trial, and then it might have just gone down to assault, and everything would have been sort of more or less hunky dory.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even, because in the real life they weren't even dishonorably discharged.
Mhm.
They were sent back and eventually honorably discharged. Their code, their honor was not affected by the whole situation.
Yeah.
Um, but in this, the doctor is the one that throws it on them. That
Yeah. The reason I think that it's so easy to think that Jessup did that is because we see him uh, doing the machinations all in the background of doctoring the logbook and um, writing up the fake transfer order. So it just would fit in with what he was doing otherwise to have influenced him. But you're right, that's not evidence; it's circumstantial.
and yes, the logbooks to me also stand out as an oddity. Like they just seem like, I don't know, Sorkin forcing it, if that
How
makes sense.
so?
They seem like out of character. Like Jessup until the end, until the final, he goes ballistic and like puking into your dead skull type thing,
Yeah,
which is psychotic. Until he goes psychotic at the end, he seems oddly measured. I mean, he seems kind of like an ass, but
I
like
I
is
would disagree with that.
okay.
To me, it seems like he's constantly he's like a volcano that you don't see what's going on the surface, but you can tell it could erupt at any point. Like you see that with the uh, in the first scene when Kendrick and Markinson were in the office, and Markinson says, "I think that's a problem." Like, you know what? I think I will have that word with just you, and he sends Kendrick away, and like he does kind of hold it back, but you can tell that it's simmering the anger that he has that he was just questioned in front of another officer. And then you also see it when um, he's asked for the transfer order. It's like, you got to ask me nicely. Like, you. you can see that he's a psycho bubbling underneath. It's just kind of waiting for that to erupt.
I guess the reason I, in my head, slightly discount at least the second part. The first
Mhm,
part, I believe you're right at least. The second part is I just think that it's I do think sort of the Harvard sort of elite thing. I think
mhm,
that's what Sorkin is playing up. He's playing up the animosity between the sort of the Southerners, the sort of the what he would consider to be ill-educated, um, you know, military officers who
mhm,
do the grunt work. It's kind of funny. I have you've been following Pete Hegseth's appointment and stuff like
mhm.
that.
Yep.
Have you seen his interview with Sean Ryan?
No.
Well, he kind of references a line from A Few Good Men that Jessup says at the end. Something about like, you know, something questioning the way in which I provide it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. How dare you stand there and um, enjoy the freedom that I provide, and then question the manner in which I provide it.
yes, and Hegseth's point when in the discussion was all these there are tons of military officers being thrown under the bus for what he sees as um, basically rules that are sort of very legalistic but not very practical
Mhm,
for military officers, and that the military is basically run by lawyers more so, and not really run by the military anymore. Like, it's not
yeah.
for the military. It's not for an actual defense of the country or
Mhm.
success. It's basically only there to exist as I guess more of a um, just a place of social change.
Yeah, and that was also one of the main themes running through the book, at least for Lone Survivor, was that
Which
you
one's
know
Lone Survivor?
that it ends up it had a movie adaptation with Mark Wahlberg as the main character, but he's Navy SEAL. They were on a kill mission for one particular man, and it was four Navy SEALs. They encountered a local villager while they were waiting, and rather than just kill the local villager, they couldn't um, because they would have just been destroyed by the military lawyers and the SOPs that had been written. They had to let him go. He ran, told everyone in the village that they were out there. Mark Wahlberg's character ends up being the only Marcus Luttrell is the name of the soldier.
Okay.
He's the only one that ends up surviving, but he talks about the fact that in any other day and age in military, they would have killed that civilian because it sucks, but that's a part of war. Uh, Instead, three of his buddies ended up dying, and then there was a rescue operation put on, and 20, I think it was, other soldiers, including a bunch of Navy SEALs, ended up being killed as the chopper was trying to land. There was an RPG launched into it and destroyed and killed everyone. So he was just again getting to that point that you need to be able to operate as a military and not have everything be set out by lawyers who've never seen a battlefield.
Yes, and that's uh and if you think A Few Good Men's taking the opposite approach. Um is trying, or
Yeah.
at least is trying to rationalize the act. So I guess, let me be clear. This is why I said on the onset that I don't know enough about the military. I don't know enough about the sort of the how morals of war and stuff like that. you know and of course this isn't in the middle of a war, so it's harder to it's easier to make an argument.
Hmm.
But the point more, though, I guess technically we were at war with Cuba and they were in Guantanamo Bay. Um, they are kind of right there. Um, though it's not a hot war, it's a cold war, and that's what makes
Yeah.
things a bit um, chaotic and hard to judge, I guess.
Yeah, but
Cold Wars.
I do want to get back to one of the things you said, that you thought the logbooks was out of character
Okay.
for Jessup.
Yes.
Um, I actually think it's really important that they had the evidence of the logbook and the fake transfer order, because they don't actually they never say what he's being charged with at the end when he's being arrested, but it's certainly not, he's not being charged for murder. And
That's true.
I think that what he's probably being charged for is the doctoring of the logbook, for the fake transfer order,
Yes.
for perjury, and lying on the stand.
Well, but it's not clear, so he could be like I feel like if Sorkin had continued that, he might have actually they might have charged him for 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 murder or something like that.
They might have, but I think that it's bad that they left it
Ambiguous.
vague,
Yeah.
but I think that having, something that is definitely, a chargeable offense that's been proven in court was important, and those two things were definite that he had done those.
Yes. And let me be clear, if I were to write a good military character, it would not be Jessup. I'm not saying that he's a good character.
Mhm.
I'm saying he gets a bad rap for and I think Sorkin is portraying him a certain way in order to make you not sympathetic in any way,
Yeah, that's fair.
which is just I guess a part of but it a part of movies generally speaking, but it's frustrating when these people are, almost stand-ins for real people. Like,
Yeah.
it's one thing to go if you're writing Star Wars, if you're looking at Star Wars, they're not I mean, you can make, comparisons from characters to characters to real
Mhm.
life,
Yeah.
but they're not supposed to be our world.
Yeah, that's true.
But
But
this
what
is
I
our world, and there are real people that Sorkin is sort of attacking with his, um with his portrayal of Jessup, with the way he wrote Jessup.
right. I will also say, first of all, that having Jack Nicholson play Jessup makes him so much easier to dislike, because
Oh, yeah.
Jack Nicholson is so good at playing dislikable, disgusting, vile characters.
That's the great thing. This movie is so well done, so well written, so well acted, so well directed. Uh,
Hmm.
like, everything's going for it. I just can't stand, uh, Sorkin's liberal biases.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you there, but I think that, like, one of the things that I was just asking myself as one of the biggest, um, overarching questions is, let's just say that, Jessup hadn't doctored the logbooks and covered things up. Was ordering the code red immoral? Like, regardless of how effective it is. And I would say, uh, I, it was imprudent not to transfer the victim. But I would say, overall, I think that on the one hand, it sounds like it's an, a good or necessary part of, just maintaining discipline. But on the other hand, he had been ordered from above not to have code reds happening. So ultimately, like, you do have to obey orders from your superiors. So I think that where it breaks down ultimately is that, like, his first fault was, not transferring, and then second, actually, um, ordering the code red, even though he was told that's not supposed to happen, and he had been allowing that. So he was the break in the chain of command where they said not to have code reds. But that's still not a massive moral failing. The moral failing came then when he just tried to cover it up because he's looking forward to his next appointment.
Well, that's also inferences. We don't know. He never says, I need this to go away, because I mean they're playing it subtle, of course, which
Yeah.
makes a better movie, I would say. But we have to make a lot of conclusions about why he's doing this. That's why I'm saying the doctoring the logbooks just seems kind of out of character, is because we don't really get anything that would seem to say that he rejects, um, or that he would want to cover it up. Like, in some sense, even Tom Cruise recognizes that he wants to be able to say, "I ordered it.
Hmm.
You shouldn't question me." I If he's so powerful, if he thinks he's, protected, why doesn't he just not doctor the log? Why would he doctor the logbooks?
Well, it all started when he allowed the soldiers to be arrested because he could have said that he ordered it, and but as soon as the victim died, that raises the stakes, kind of like we said at the very beginning. And the soldiers, before he was even there, um, had been arrested. So he'd either have to directly say, I did this and it led to the death of someone, or he has to, the things had already started to fall, the beginning of the avalanche. So he just kind of had to ride it out.
Well, okay. Well, let me frame it a little bit, or maybe because we don't get the time in which the code red happens. We don't get the perspective there.
Hmm.
We don't get what Jessup actually did. We only hear sort of about it somewhat
Yeah.
secondhand. Now, let's say, because this is a possibility that it could have happened like this. He learns that the guy dies, or that something crazy happens. All like he knows what a code red is. A code red, and he knows what basically
Well, he had
Kendrick.
ordered it.
Yeah, no, that's what I'm saying. He knows about what it means. He knows, like, it's not about trying to, like, actually kill somebody, right?
Yeah.
So why would he assume that just the code red itself caused it? He could theoretically be like, well, okay, you weren't supposed to do this. Like, you weren't supposed to cause this situation. So, maybe you say he thinks, okay, we'll have them arrested, just in case they did something, that wasn't ordered, right?
Yeah.
Because if
I
I
what I would put in contrast to that though is I he would have probably talked to Kendrick to find out about those two soldiers. And like honestly, I think that Kendrick probably chose Dawson specifically because Dawson had disobeyed him before and he was like seeking retribution against him for
but
that. Like
he also could say he did disobey me previously, so it's possible he disobeyed him now.
right, but again, what's the motive for them going so far as to kill him?
I'm not saying that there is a motive. I'm saying there's at least some ambiguity that might incline Jessup to be on the safe side regarding this. And then he hears from the doctor that it was poison. Let's just say he doesn't coerce them, or coerce the doctor. The doctor just says it has to be poison because otherwise it doesn't make sense, because he was in a clean bill of health and there's no other reason. Okay, well, that's not what Kendrick or Jessup ordered.
Right. But they still would have had to admit to ordering it, which was directly against the orders from above to stop code reds.
Yes, that's true, but he doesn't want the point more so is that he can feel, um if he doesn't tell them that, if he doesn't tell them why it happened, he can still feel good at night, basically, knowing that it wasn't him that caused it.
Yeah, and again, that's where I think that ultimately it's him being the break in the chain of command about code reds is the first moral failing, and then the second being the cover up.
Yes. And what I'm only arguing is just that there's a way to see him even in a better light.
There's a way to, but
It's not as likely, or it is not, it's not what they want you to think about in the movie. It's not the way the movie paints it, but
yeah,
there is a way, and I'm just putting that forth just um, for interest's sake.
yeah, but again, kind of like you've said a few times, it's just speculation and possibilities.
But it's all speculation because it's not real and we don't even see it. So yeah,
Yeah.
like it's all all we're doing is speculating. I mean, for the good of for the interest in the story, for
Hmm.
for to sort of come to more ideas about it, or to to look at it from a different angle.
Yeah.
But yes, also there is also an argument, and I don't know whether or not it's a good thing or a bad thing. This is again why I said about like the military thing. I don't know anything about it. But I think the thing um uh that I think, Jessup would, or someone like Jessup would say, is that them ordering them not to do code reds was a part of the feminization and legalistic nature of what's happening to the military.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree there. One of the things that is interesting to me though is why did they made it very clear that there was a meeting first where they were told nobody is to give him a code red. And then
Yeah.
immediately afterwards, he goes and orders Dawson to do it. My question is,
Yeah.
why have that other meeting first?
Yeah, no, that's, I mean, there's one particular is that, um, everyone else had a vendetta against, Santiago.
Yeah.
Um, Dawson and Downey were the only ones who basically didn't.
Yeah,
So
and maybe
they
even Dawson was picked because they knew he wouldn't be overly brutal.
they wouldn't actually hurt him,
Yeah.
or they at least wouldn't. That wouldn't be their intent at all.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like it does seem bizarre. The death of, Santiago happens by the man who had been protecting him from
Hmm.
code reds that weren't ordered.
Yeah.
Because that's the implication that all of the other guys in the platoon would have at different points would have wanted to give Santiago a code red, and that would be because they were, you know, frustrated with his abilities and holding them back.
Yeah. Absolutely.
But Dawson wouldn't allow it. He would have kicked their asses.
So, yeah, as a direct quote from the movie, but I think that perhaps what it was is they actually Kendrick was wanting him not to end up severely injured. So that's why he told everyone else, don't touch him, even though he went outside of the chain of command, and then goes to the one person that he would trust most not to go overboard. It's possible. I don't know.
Well, just the way they frame it in the movie almost seems like it's a conspiracy to kill Santiago, but there's no evidence that anybody actually wanted him dead.
No, quite to the contrary. He was being told, or Kendrick was told by Jessup, he's going to make proficiency on his next report, or I will blame you, and then I will kill you.
Yeah, Kendrick's the only one that's threatened.
Yeah. Yeah. So I don't think that there is like a conspiracy. It's more just things went out of hand and then they covered it up.
Yes, but the way the movie makes you feel, or the sort of the way that the movie sort of, yeah, gives you the impression, even if that's not the full story that they're telling, it gives you the impression that Kendrick and Jessup are murderers.
Yeah, like that they're ultimately the ones that are responsible for his death.
But even then, that would be involuntary manslaughter.
Which I did want to bring this up. So in the litigation and trying to find a plea deal, what they're ultimately given the opportunity for is pleading guilty to involuntary manslaughter. They'll be home in 6 months.
Yeah.
And Dawson, I should say, Downey doesn't really get a say in what
Why is
happens to him.
Downey so stupid? Also, is that like why would he have made it into the like? Is isn't there like a I don't know an intellectual requirement for the Marines?
Well, we can ask some of the people in the chat later on if they have experience, but
Yes. If anybody knows, like Downey, I didn't realize it until watching it again this time around, because I've watched this pretty much my whole life almost,
yep.
but it's and I've always watched the cut version, which I had to watch the cut version again because I didn't have access to the uncut version. But the I hate like watching. I've only watched like the uncut version like once, and I totally prefer it. Of course, it's it's just much more vulgar. It's not like Aaron Sorkin's not really a sex guy. He doesn't write sex into his movies for the most part.
Mhm.
It's either implied, it's just not there, which
Yeah.
I respect him for that at least. But the point is that um, what was the point? Where was I?
So involuntary manslaughter was where I was going. I forget the point you were trying to make.
Yes, where was I going with it? Um, I don't know. You continue with your
Okay.
involuntary manslaughter thing.
Yeah. So they were given the option for pleading guilty 6 months,
Oh,
and
right. Downey, sorry, can I
oh
say
yeah, Downey. Yeah.
Downey is very dumb.
Hmm.
He's even seems like he could be like clinically um you know clinically dumb,
Yes.
uh and it just seems bizarre that he would be able to get as far as he did. um
Well,
Anyways,
he was a private.
what I mean is that he'd be allowed in allowed in the Marines.
Yeah.
The
No,
Marines
that's fair.
are supposed to be um more elite, not as elite as the SEALs or not as elite as the Rangers, but still, more
Well,
elite than your average naval officer.
yeah, but some would say that they're also supposed to be stupid because they run in where no one else is willing to.
Okay, well there you go. That might be the answer. So
um,
back to your thing.
yeah. So, um, would it have been my question, morally speaking, would it have been acceptable for them to have accepted that plea bargain? Because involuntary manslaughter, actually, even though this was an accident, it does sound kind of like an accurate and just punishment for them because they did push it down too far. It was negligence, even though it was ultimately the coronary condition that killed him. It was their negligence that ultimately led to his death. So to me, it kind of actually makes sense to be charged with involuntary manslaughter.
Maybe I still think the doctors should be the main
Oh,
culprit of all of this.
yes, I'm not disagreeing there. I think that the doctor absolutely should have been held accountable, but um, just that Dawson made such a big deal out of I'm not going to dishonor myself, the Corps, um, by saying that I did something wrong, and then at the end
He
he
accepts
says,
it.
"Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I should have. We're supposed to fight for Willie."
Yeah, but but it's so hard because I don't actually think they did necessarily anything wrong. Because
Yeah, I
they're I mean, I still don't get the rag part, um, but I get the tying up thing and then shave his head, but I don't really get the rag thing, why it was necessary.
probably just to keep him quiet.
But yeah, like, think about it this way, isn't like, the relationship between Dawson and Santiago wait, that's weird. But the inconsistencies are Santiago is threatening to like sacrifice Dawson for an illegal fence line shooting,
Hmm.
right? To get off the base.
Yeah.
And that Dawson has been the one protecting him from Code Reds, which you'd think that would be they'd have a relationship of some kind.
I'm assuming so.
And then why would he not just say, "I have to do this, we're just gonna shave your head, this is, I was ordered to do so," you know?
Well, I just shaving a head, first of all, isn't going to be much of a code red. They've got to make it a bit more
Okay, but what I mean is
terrifying than that.
no, but I'm just saying, is Kendrick really going to inspect the code red? Because it can't even really be official anyways.
Right. But what I would say in response to that is they or he was probably told, don't get caught doing this because I just told everybody not to do a code red.
No, but what I'm
So he
saying
was
is why
shutting him
wouldn't
up.
Santiago be like, "Okay, fine, I accept what's happening to me." Like because of how seemingly they should be close, but then why is he throwing Dawson under the bus at the same time?
I don't know.
Those things don't make those things don't add up.
Yeah, I don't have an answer there.
Like people don't just I mean, unless Santiago's just kind of an ass too. Like he's not
Which it certainly seems like it.
I mean, he's kind of a difficult person, it seems, maybe, but I don't uh
Well, I mean, he's throwing the person who's been protecting him under the bus.
well, that's what I'm saying. It feels like a a plot hole.
And it might just be that they needed a reason to give Dawson a motive.
Which this is what I mean by it just seems sort of what's the word? Forced. Seems like extremely forced, like something that doesn't seem character driven at all.
Yeah, that's fair, but I just it is what it is. I can't give you more insight into the mind of Aaron Sorkin behind that.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we've talked enough about sort of the guys,
Yeah,
which it's been about an hour almost, but which is kind of crazy. But so I think we should redirect a little bit towards the dynamics between
the three
Weinberg.
lawyers.
What's his first name?
Sam
Sam.
Weinberg.
Right. Sam, Joe, and um, what's Tom Cruise? But
Caffey.
yeah? But what's his first name?
I don't know.
Daniel.
Yeah,
Daniel.
that's it.
Right.
Daniel Alistair Caffey.
Yes, Daniel, Alistair, Caffey. And just sort of let's talk about it sort of from their perspective.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah, I thought that they were an it's interesting that you mentioned the three types of heroes usually in a Sorkin movie, and two of them I think end up being on opposite ends of the spectrum,
yes.
with then Tom Cruise kind of being the virtue, the mean between those two. And
Well,
what I mean by
let's just assume that Tom Cruise's character is a Catholic
yeah,
for just the fact that those are the three types of sort of people that Sorkin seems to write.
yeah,
And if he was Jewish, the play would have emphasized that.
hmm,
And he's not a woman, obviously. Um, though that might be confusing for some people today. Um,
unfortunately. But
this is what I mean by people like Sorkin can't write anticipating what's coming next in the liberal framework.
yep.
But
So
the
the
point is, let's assume Caffey's a Catholic,
mhm,
which kind of makes sense, I guess, for sort of the liberal Catholic and his focus on his father's focus on social justice.
mhm,
That basically leads to the what is it? The desegregation of schools, or the
Yeah,
forced resegregation of school. No,
or forced integration.
forced integration. That's what I was looking for. Forced
Yeah,
integration of schools. Um. Anyway, so that's that is the sort of. It's so interesting because he tends to emphasize the virtues of liberal Catholics.
yeah.
Aaron Sorkin's not a Catholic; he's Jewish. I don't understand it, why he has such a fascination with Catholics, except for, in my opinion, to undermine our faith.
It's certainly possible. I don't know enough about the man and directly about his movies to be able to speak intelligently on that.
Well, have you seen The West Wing?
I've seen some of it. I haven't watched a large amount.
Well, Martin Sheen's character's the president, he's a Catholic.
Yeah,
He's, you know,
he's a JFK Biden type Catholic.
yes, and he's even more virtuous than Bill Clinton, in the sense of politically. I'm not talking about morally.
Yeah,
Of course he's more moral than Bill Clinton. But
yeah,
like, they want to send the Defense of Marriage Act up against him basically,
hmm
and he does a pocket veto basically.
yeah,
Um because he thinks it's so unjust. He has no
yeah,
logical reason for why it's unjust. He just thinks it is. It's kind of funny. But the point is that he's even more like, I mean, Bill Clinton signed the Defense of Marriage Act. So like that type of thing. That's the like he's supposed to be the idealized liberal president
yeah.
in almost every way imaginable. And even there's this whole thing where he's supposed to like, they're trying to convince him to stay the execution of I think it was a some guy who was previously charged in like uh Mexican courts,
hmm
and their argument is basically Mexican courts aren't trustworthy enough, so they shouldn't charge this guy for what he did, that the evidence comes from Mexican courts or whatever.
Oh,
And anyways, they want to give him the death penalty. And the president could stop the death penalty or whatever, could pardon, or not pardon, but like lower the
stay the
sentence.
execution.
Stay the execution, that's the right word. And he doesn't stay the execution. And I can't remember the exact reason why he didn't stay the execution. But then a priest comes in and basically, gives him a lecture, and then the priest hears his confession, basically implying that he sinned somehow by not staying the execution. And the Pope calls him also and tells him that he should, or the Pope wants to call him.
Well,
They
that's also very in keeping with JP2.
Yes, it
Like,
is, but that doesn't, just because JP2 has a personal opinion on the death penalty doesn't mean that it's intrinsically a Catholic
no,
evil.
no, I agree. I
Yeah.
think that states have the right and sometimes the duty to carry out the death penalty, but it's understandable to portray that as, going against what the Pope had said if somebody's just looking in from the outside.
Yes, I'm saying, but I think he's purposefully uh sort of trying to use only one Catholic perspective.
Yeah, and
Mar-
that's completely fair.
Martin Sheen could easily make a Catholic argument. Martin Sheen's character could easily make a Catholic argument for why he has no business. It's not even his place necessarily to stay the execution. You
hmm
know, uh, like he's not the judge. He didn't participate in the case. He should, you could argue that it was his job to just allow the law and allow the state to um follow through as the law says, right?
hmm
And that his thing would be for extraordinary circumstances, not ordinary circumstances, and that the death penalty is not inherently immoral. Now you can make an argument that, from Pope John Paul II's perspective, he would have said you don't need to, or something like that, or Pope Francis makes that argument, is that it's not necessary. But that's not the only Catholic argument. That's all I'm saying is
Yeah.
he takes Catholicism from a specifically liberal perspective and dumps everything else out in order
Mhm.
to what is it? This was Cardinal Bernini. No, not Bernini. What is it? Who's the Archbishop of Chicago? The Cardinal Archbishop before Supich? No, no, not before Supich. Before Cardinal George.
I'm not sure.
Starts with the B. Anyways, he's a very bad guy, but he would always argue, you know, to
The
make
seamless garment.
yes, the seamless garment. He created that argument.
Yeah. Yeah.
But anyway, so this is I just wanted to give people some background on how he writes Catholics. Not that Tom Cruise's character is explicitly a Catholic, though it would make a lot of sense that he is one, just insofar as even Tom Cruise was raised Catholic.
Yeah.
And we talked about how he's fallen far away from that. But the point is that Tom Cruise could actually give some authenticity to that.
Yeah, absolutely. So, what I was saying before is I kind of view them as like the two, the excess and the lack of virtue, and then he's in the middle, where on the one hand you have Weinberg, who like directly is asked, "Why do you hate them?" And he doesn't say, "I don't." He says like exactly why, like because they bullied a kid. They didn't like him, so they killed him because he couldn't run very fast. Like he's so ready to like pass judgment on them. He was even asked like, "Do you believe their story?" And he's like, "Yeah, I believe every word of their story, and that they should go to jail for the rest of their lives." And then on the other side, you have Joe, who's ready to believe and defend them at any point. She again is ready to pass judgment in the opposite because she is predisposed to believe them. And then in the middle, you have Kathy, who's like, doesn't matter what I believe, it matters what I can prove.
Yes. But okay, well let's I'm going to elaborate a little bit on why I think those two characters have those perspectives.
Please.
I I think the feminist has that perspective because she sees that sort of or she believes that everyone is stuck in in the system that is flawed and that she wants to feminize. Like she wants to coddle everyone to some degree, which is sort of somewhat feminist idea, right? You want to like like, especially with Downey, who's very dumb. He and it's perfect for her to be his lawyer
Yeah.
because she really just kind of wants to coddle him. She wants to protect him from all from his decisions or from what other people told him to do. Like she sees herself as being pushed down by the system, and she kind of wants to defeat the Jessups of the world. So she's prone to supporting uh, or defending them.
Hmm.
Now, I think Lieutenant Weinberg is kind of falling into sort of the. I think he's just supposed to be overly affected by the Holocaust, even though it's been many years later. Sort of he just doesn't believe that I was ordered to do anything is a legitimate um defense to anything. And he's even willing to disregard the contrary evidence that says that basically Dawson and you know um Santiago were
Dawson
possibly
and
friends,
Downey. Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah.
which is confusing again because Santiago seemed to be willing to throw him under the bus. Those two things don't make any sense, as we've discussed previously. But there's there's evidence he just kind of passes over, like he just doesn't give them any credence, all because of sort of the um, I mean, he even says it. It didn't work for the Nazis at Nuremberg.
Hmm.
Like that's his argument. His basically argument is, I've seen this happen to my people, and I've seen this happen to people, um, and I'm not going. I don't want to be a part of any of it. And he's not really taking it into a. He's not personalizing it. seeing the person behind the situation. He's just seeing it on paper, basically.
Right.
He's keeping it completely out of his, like, well, he thinks, I think, that he's keeping it out of his personal life, but actually he's making it his personal life.
Yeah. And that's those are certainly possible interpretations. Again, I think that from my perspective, I don't know Sorkin's work well enough to put all of that interpretation into it.
Well, so Sorkin wrote a play, A Few Good Men, first.
Okay.
And the play has a lot. I haven't read everything about it. I haven't read the play, but it seems to me that there's a higher emphasis on the Jewish aspect.
Okay.
Like, like the closest thing you get to it is you Lieutenant Weinberg from Jessup.
Yeah.
Like, that's the closest thing you get to sort of some the Jewish ethnicity or religion being invoked, but very subtly. The
Yeah.
point is that Weinberg doesn't, or that Jessup doesn't think that, you know, um, people like Weinberg would be really willing to defend the United States, or will do what they have to defend it,
Yeah.
and that they're weak. So that's sort of the mentality, but that's very under the radar in the movie, but I think it's
Right.
much more pronounced. Or that's my guess from just
Yeah.
the little that I read of the play. It's more pronounced in
That's
in the in the
in the play.
play.
Yeah, that's certainly possible. I don't have that information. I didn't even know there was a play first. But
Yes.
what I would also say as a rejoinder to that is that we have neither of those characters are really shown as being objective or right in their viewpoints. They're both kind of shown as lacking judgment and discernment because of that. And then you have Kathy who's saying, I don't care what, or it doesn't matter what I think, it matters what I can prove.
And
So,
and he also defends them, saying this isn't these aren't the Nazis at Nuremberg. Like,
yeah.
he makes the argument, and I think the part of the point of that is that Sorkin maybe thinks, because he does this in his other in the West Wing and stuff like that. He'll make somebody who, like, shouldn't have, like, skin in the game, maybe
Hmm.
make the best argument, because I think he thinks that people watching who also don't have skin in the game or don't have a real connection to the story, I think it will, having an outsider, like, basically be the be the reason, be moral, you know, the moral voice, sort of.
Yeah.
It will bring the audience to your opinion easier,
Yeah.
and that, because, let's just say, feminists aren't always the most popular people. Like, not everyone's a feminist. Not every woman's a feminist, and male feminists are pathetic. So it's not really the most attractive situation. A very small population of the country are Jews. Like, it's just a fact. It
Yep.
may make them less relatable, right?
Yep.
But Kathy is, and Tom Cruise in general, is kind of the guy everyone wants to be, sort of, at least in the 90s.
Right.
He he is the most persuasive of all of them, and
Hmm.
he would, no matter how they wrote the character. He just would be. He's a more persuasive actor.
Hmm.
He is more relatable. He is the everyman kind of character,
Yeah.
who's trying to live up to his father's expectations.
Yes.
He
That's definitely a very big theme.
Like, they make him so relatable. I would say, very, like, that's such a common thing people deal with. If you have a father you have to live up to, or he wanted you to live up to him, or whatever, and he's not really. He's just sort of a common character.
Yeah.
So
He's introduced by playing softball, and
true. So
I
he
yeah.
is the everyman character that will bring the rest of the population on board with his opinion.
Yeah.
That's why I think that he's the voice of reason. Because even though Sorkin agrees with both the other two in some way, he needs to make he needs the most or he needs to be he needs the best deliverer of the message to be the one that delivers the most compelling argument. And
Yeah.
this is actually
That's fair.
why Democrats are terrible today. Like, they don't have anyone that can deliver. This is a little off tangent, but the point is back in the 90s, back in the early 2000s, they actually had people, generally, some of them at least, could really deliver their message, even though a lot of it was garbage.
Yeah.
Um,
Obama was very persuasive. Doesn't mean he
exactly.
was right.
Bill Clinton was very persuasive. Uh, you know, JFK was very persuasive.
Yeah.
Like the the Democrats always lose when they don't have a persuasive person running.
Yeah. Yep.
Even Biden, in some sense, was more persuasive by virtue of not being there. In 2020,
Yeah.
his persuasiveness was, I'm doing what all of you are told to do, right?
Yeah.
He's hiding in the basement, right? That's what we were
Yeah.
basically we were told to stay, uh away from people. I
Yeah.
can see why that might be an appealing thing for some people, just because at least he's doing what we were told to do.
Yeah.
Which was perfect because you didn't have to have him really deliver much of a message. But that was
Yeah.
his message. His message was, I'm one of you, sort of. I'm following the rules that you are.
Yeah.
Eh,
Which I do have to say, it's kind of crazy that he's been more intelligible over the last 3 weeks than he was since he was running for president.
Yeah, well, there's some conspiracies about that too.
Yeah.
Which I'm tempted to think some of them are accurate.
Uh,
um,
yeah. Maybe it's just that he actually is relaxed now and he doesn't have the stress to weigh him down and crush his whatever mental energy he has.
yeah,
Who
I don't
knows?
know. Yeah, I don't know why that he failed in that debate so badly. Maybe it could have also been. I swear it could have been drugs. Like just
Yeah.
a bad drugs in his system. Anyways, but that's neither here nor there. The point is that Caffey makes the best argument. He delivers
Yes.
it. He makes it the most compelling. He gets he drives everyone else who's watching the movie into the
Hmm.
position Sorkin wants them to be in,
Yeah.
and that is Sorkin's goal in every time he has somebody like deliver a big like speech about why you should believe this or why we believe that or something like that.
Yeah.
Is he has to make them the most compelling, and he and the most likable characters usually do those,
Yeah.
because he knows that not not everybody's going to be not everyone's going to fall for it, basically.
Yeah, yeah. So one thing that didn't really make sense to me this time, like I've known before what's going to come and how good he's going to be in court, but the night before the arraignment, he tells Joe that he's going to ask for new counsel. And for some reason, she says that he's the only one that's going to be able to do
Yeah.
it. He's never been in court. He's never made the argument. How would she know or have come to that conclusion?
I swear the only thing that Sorkin has there is woman's intuition. Like,
Maybe, but like it's
it doesn't make sense. No, you're totally right. I noticed that too. It makes absolutely no sense why she thinks he will do a good job.
and
It,
he's the only one that can do it.
she's been begging the whole time for somebody else to be put on the case.
Yep.
And
And is it just that one moment of asking for the transfer file? Like that's nothing.
yeah, that sort of quick turnaround, sort of. Or is she just falling in love with him?
I don't think that she would have gone. I think that they make the case that she is, but I don't think that she would have gone to that level of saying that he's the only one that could possibly save them.
Well, maybe she's looking at the writing on the wall, sort of, and that because the problem is Downey won't or Dawson won't move,
Yeah,
and Downey does whatever Dawson will tell him to do. I'm
right.
trying to think what maybe she's thinking about what lawyer would even take it on.
Well, they would be told to, like, they'd be given an order just like he was in the beginning
Yeah, but then why can he ask for make a motion for new counsel?
because his client hates him.
No, I'm saying, but if he's ordered to, couldn't the other person just do that too? Like, what's keeping them
Yeah,
in the
that
case?
I don't know.
Like, those two things don't make sense. If he's ordered to and he can't get out of it, why would the other guy not be able to do the same thing?
No, it's similar to when people like get assigned, a state-sponsored defendant or defense lawyer. Um, I don't know. I don't know how that works and when they can, you know, shirk responsibility off to somebody else.
Well,
That's well beyond my understanding.
the other thing would be also who would the government then pick? Isn't there what is going on in that background part where the government's basically trying
Well, the
trying to get it
military.
what this
The
well the
military is the same.
government and the military are the same thing. I mean, I would say so. I mean, they're part of the same group. Because the military is led by the president.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, the president's not making these, single-handedly decisions or anything, but he's. But anyways, the point is that like the military seems to want this, or the Navy, I should say, the Navy wants it to be hushed up,
Yes.
sort of. But I don't understand that part either. Because if they wanted it hushed up, why is Jessup worried about any of this? Like, why does he then doctor anything? Because he could have said everything he already said. Like it removes the motive for him to actually remove or doctor the logbooks. If he has friends upstairs, basically, and he's about to be moved upstairs, and they want to hush it up anyways, why don't they just
Yeah.
you know
There's one
yeah,
reason. So, first of all, he didn't sign the transfer order until the morning that Kathy was going to Cuba. So,
yeah.
like, he hadn't, proactively made that step until he knew he was going to be asked for it. But Markinson disappears, and Markinson knew about the other flight. So that is why he probably went and doctored the logbook afterwards, because it shoots a hole in the story. And by that point, they had already pled not guilty rather than just taking the plea deal like was expected.
No, what I'm saying is why not just why doesn't he just have the ability to say I did all these things and then they hush it up, right? Like why isn't if the Navy really wants to hush it up, they could have just hushed it up. They could just not charge him. And then they um go through the case and just have it end up they basically just agree to the terms that and that the judge sentences him to. Like if it sort of removes that whole like all like that Jessup's actually that powerful. If he is that powerful, why did they sign it to Caffey? And if he's not, and it seems like he's not all powerful, and that's why he had to go through all of these hoops, and that the Navy was willing to prosecute him for something anyways.
Well, they were initially trying to keep it hush hush until, like, Joanne had to bring the case to her higher ups and said like they're just gonna try them down there. Let's bring them up here and assign actual counsel.
Oh, okay. So the Marines were trying to hush it up down there.
Yeah, and then
So,
she brought it up with the Navy JAG Corps,
yeah, that's interesting.
and
And
which is her job as internal affairs.
well, Pete Hegseth caused them the Jagoffs. You know, Jag
Yeah,
officers.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah. Anyways, it's just interesting because, obviously these two things are not, it's fiction, obviously. So but it sort of, in some ways, represents the animosity and the frustration that the Jag Jag Corps has with the rest of the military,
yeah.
um, because they're not seen very popular, it seems, amongst regular officers.
Which then would make Joanne's character even more hated because she's internal affairs for them.
And she's a woman, so she's kind of out of place.
Yeah. One of the things though with her is she's not like the girl boss that's super competent and just going to do everything. She has good moments, but she's not portrayed as like perfect in any means. She has the moment like, we strenuously object and she
No,
no, we
strenuously.
strenuously object.
Oh, well, you strenuously object. All right, that changes everything. Yeah, no, it was pretty embarrassing. But that's kind of the difference between the '90s liberal and the 2010s, 2020s liberal. Um, they just they can't have a flawed female character in a role that society sort of dictates that she shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Because even her performance shows she shouldn't have it. She should not be internal affairs for the Navy.
Actually, no, I think that she is perfect for that role
Well, but
because
what I mean is she's a bad lawyer.
she's a bad trial lawyer. And a bad but as far as making others actually do their job, like she does that with Kathy. He actually does have to do his job because she's making him.
I guess. What I mean is, I still don't think it's. I think you can have an internal affairs officer who isn't outside or who isn't so far removed from uh from real officers.
Yep. No,
Like like
that's fair.
she seems like she has an vendetta, not just trying to not just justice. She has a vendetta against uh in the Marines.
That I don't believe.
Not like not the victims,
No, I
not
know,
who she
but
sees as the victims, but like she is she is accusing Jessup the whole time with even when she has no evidence.
well, there was circumstantial. Like,
Yeah, but I'm just saying is like as if as internal affairs, wouldn't your job I mean your job would be to be not just to be open-minded, not completely like a dog with a bone.
yeah,
I don't
that's
know.
fair.
Maybe I just think it's of course she, even though she has her point, she's right kind of in the end. The way she gets to being right doesn't seem to be the kind of person you want at the job.
To me, I think that more than anything, from the beginning, her motive and why she does what she does is to protect Dawson and Downey. I don't think it's to get Jessup. I think that she sees them as good men who are just doing what they were told to do and that they don't deserve to be sent to jail for just following an order.
Yeah, that's the most charitable interpretation of her motives. So I
Yeah.
will. That's a possible way of interpreting her motives. I think that's a little too idealistic of an interpretation, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, that's fair.
I think she sees this more as her. opportunity to go after um basically people with a different philosophy from her of running the military. And that
That's certainly possible, but I,
she's
disagree.
just her sympathy just comes into effect as she's doing what she already wants to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one interpretation. And again, like this is us reading into it. She doesn't actually exist as a person, so
Are you sure?
there's
I'm just kidding.
there's no act like there's no definitive yes or no to this.
But I think her part is to sort of also make us more all right with women in the military.
I, I'm not going to disagree there.
Yeah. I just think that's part of what sort of in somewhat what Pete Hegseth is saying is that it's the military is being used as a um social tool,
Yeah.
which the military has always been used as a social tool. Like there,
Yeah.
in some ways, there's no getting around that.
Well, there is when we didn't have a standing army.
Yes, that's the only option. Um, but and then how would you? And right, I could, we could go back to sort of feudalism of some kind, and
Well, that seems
duties
like
and stuff like that.
yeah, but that's neither here nor there for this conversation.
Yes, but what I mean is we've always the America. Let's just say that America has never not had a standing army.
I don't believe that's true.
Well, I mean, I guess what I mean is we had it in the revolution.
Well, they had to create one and then it was disbanded and then they created another one for the War of 1812
Well, but
and
then what did Washington use against the Whiskey Rebellion? Is that
I
the
my guess is the um
National
I don't know
Guard?
for sure, but either National Guard or militias because state militias were
Okay, well, wouldn't you consider that at least sort of a standing military of some kind? Militias?
I honestly that's a little too deep into
Okay.
like what a militia is versus an army. I
Well,
yeah,
pretty much ever since the French Revolution, there's been standing armies. Almost everywhere. At least major standing armies. There were sort of smaller standing armies, but then it was taken sort of up a sort of up to 11. It was turned up to 11 with conscription.
yeah,
So there's that. Um, but uh, yes, if we didn't have a standing army, it wouldn't be able to be used for social sort of change. What I mean is also if you had a standing army, you would just have to force societal norms that are conventional
yeah,
and maintain that, and that would in some sense prevent the weaponization of the military as means of social progress.
yeah.
Because that
Progress.
progress, yes, because there's no
Yeah.
such thing as progress. Which is the point. Which is there's a great John Stewart clip recently. He was talking to this guy from the American Enterprise Institute, and the guy had written a book basically on why the Democrats are in the situation they are in right now.
Hmm.
And I really hope they don't take his advice, because if they did, they might win.
Yeah.
And it's all about sort of getting rid of DEI and getting rid of like basically going back to sort of older democratic strategies.
Yeah.
And John Stewart says he says what the government should be doing, and he says that government is to spread wealth and progress to its citizens,
Hmm.
which I thought was the most perverted. I mean, it was great him saying it in essence. It was such a like outing. It just sort of outed his ideology,
Yeah.
but it's just extremely perverse.
Yeah, I would agree with that.
Anyways, but that's what it reminds me of. So, so I do think there's a lot of sort of like Kevin Bacon is sort of trying to help, but also trying to sort of achieve the government's ends.
Yeah, because that's his job. Like I did really like that line from him. It's my job to represent the United States of America without passion
Or
and
prejudice.
yeah, and my client has a case.
Yes, that the problem is the confusing part is that this is Bill Clinton's America, right? Are we
Oh,
making an assumption that this is Bill Clinton's America, or is this George H.W. Bush's America?
well, let me see.
See, the problem is he might have written it under Bush, but
It was in 92 that it came out.
oh,
So by that it would have been H.W. Bush that
yeah,
he
okay.
wrote it and it was filmed under.
Okay, well, part of me actually that makes it somewhat more sympathetic in a weird way. I feel more sympathetic to criticisms of George H.W. Bush, the man who ran the CIA previously.
Yeah.
Um, at least I'm pretty sure that's true. Uh, he
Interesting fact about H.W. Bush. Technically, the governor of Texas is the head of the Texas Rangers. And at
yes,
the same time, so he was the governor of Texas and he owned the Texas Rangers baseball team. So he's the only man to have
really.
been in charge of both sets of Texas Rangers.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that at all. Wait, did he sell the Texas Rangers?
Let's see.
I didn't know the Bushes owned the. Was he the owner or?
Um, he was he did have equity and he was the managing general partner of a new
Okay.
ownership group, so he was directing that. He wasn't owner, but so he
Okay.
was directing both forms of the Texas Rangers.
Gotcha. That's kind of funny. But so I do see the sort of somewhat sympathize. Um, so I guess so in some ways that's kind of damning in my opinion to Jessup. That he's moving up under George H.W. Bush
Hmm.
in the military because I don't like what the Bushes did with the military.
You could call
But
it Bush League.
yeah, it was Bush League. Um, but I also know that I don't think much would change under Clinton,
Yeah,
ex-
that's fair.
except for probably you know, which I think Jessup would totally bend to more women in like the military and stuff like that. I think he'd bend to like Clinton's desire for that,
Yeah.
as long as he was hot, like above them.
Well, as he was saying though, he also wanted at least one woman. That was a
Yeah.
very crude moment.
Well, I think that was more. Uh, yeah, I don't know. I think that was just him being disturbing.
Yeah, which is just perfect Jack Nicholson territory.
Yeah, he definitely. I will say, like there, like he's made an unlikable character.
Yeah, absolutely. He's not meant to be in any way sympathetic.
Yeah. What do you think about Marginson?
Markinson's a really interesting character. Um,
I almost don't even know how to like process him. I mean, except for don't kill yourself. What's the wrong? What's
yeah, like
that?
I
That
don't see
I don't see the
like
logic behind that at all.
all that I can think of is that he's a tale against like a warning against despair because he thinks it's impossible for anything to change. He thinks that there's nothing Jessup can't get away with. He doesn't think that there's any chance he has of even being on the stand doing any good. So he
That,
despairs and then kills himself.
but he doesn't explain that at all. He doesn't tell you why he's despairing at all. Like
No,
it kind of seems out of nowhere.
no, I agree. I don't think that he's a very well fleshed out character. Like he's just kind of mysterious. Like we hear he was in disinformation before, so he's a ghost. Like
Disinformation? You mean counterintelligence?
or counterintelligence, that's right.
I was
Sorry.
like, I don't think that's a real thing, like a real organizational thing.
Yeah, but yeah, I just don't think that he's a great or well thought out character. He's more just a set piece around which other things flow.
He's basically supposed to give you hope and then take it away, and that's sort
Yeah,
of
he's
is
more of a plot device than a character.
yeah, which he's probably the least real.
Yeah, I would agree with that. To
Like I
have
don't
actually just gone AWOL and then show up again and then kill himself.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I really don't know what to make of his character because he doesn't seem like a character.
Yeah, like I said, I think he's more of a plot device than an actual character.
I mean, he's only there for like the intrigue,
Yeah, and
but
it
then
does make for some really like the
like the
the
cool,
shots that they
yeah,
have
yeah,
of
exactly, the cool scenes, and that's about it.
yeah, him showing up in the back seat,
Yeah,
him getting in a full dress uniform and then cutting away and you hear the thunder crack. And then after that disastrous testimony by Downey, they're like, okay, we gotta regroup. Like, nope, Markinson's dead. We're done. Like, he's
yeah,
again just uses a plot device to drive, um, ironically, another character to despair. He drives
yes,
Kathy to despair.
yes, to drinking.
Yes.
Yeah,
And
it's just
then immediately after the drinking scene, they show Kathy being the one that's driving to chase after Joe.
oh yeah, right.
So he was a drunk driver there.
Oh yeah, I didn't think about that at all. I'm gonna put Jessup on the stand.
Yeah.
Uh, which seems like it's weird when you go from like a like because Caffey's working on logic, and then he completely sends logic out the window.
Yeah. And again, part of that is just that drive, the motivation from his father to live up to that legacy.
Yeah. I just in some ways I can't imagine what it would take to actually get somebody to do what Caffey ended up doing, because it just seems like suicide.
Yeah, well, he did have the out. He had the option not to press Jessup any further.
Yeah.
So it makes sense to at least bring Jessup there and see how it's going to go. But I agree, like the actual pressing him and then accusing him, like he real life, no chance that would have happened. But it had to be like he's the savior figure. He's the only one he can do it. He makes the self-sacrifice. It doesn't make sense though.
Well, he has no evidence.
Yeah, exactly. Like
He
he has
has
everything is purely circumstantial.
and
Well,
it all requires him to say that he did it. Like it just requires Jessup to admit it.
yeah, he does know that it's true because of Markinson. He just doesn't have any proof.
Well, okay, he can't say that he knows that it happened because of Markinson, but he can say that he has reasonable suspicion
Yeah,
that it happened. Markinson could also have lied.
that's true. Disinformation.
Yeah, yeah, you gave yourself away there.
Yeah,
I mean, he is basically what amounts to a spy, sort of.
yeah,
So like, how trustworthy was Markinson?
yeah. No, that's completely fair. But all I was just saying is that putting Jessup on the stand itself isn't suicide. It's the going
Yeah.
after him when he was on the stand.
Yes. Yeah, that's kind of what I meant. Not that putting him on
Yeah,
the stand would become, though it might be career suicide,
yeah,
putting him on the stand at all.
yeah. That's fair. But he was never going to be a military
I know he
career,
wanted out,
anyways.
which yeah. Also, I mean, he was a good litigator. That's the interesting part.
Right. 45 cases in 9 months is, or 44.
Yes, one more,
But
he gets a set of steak knives.
exactly. But the the other part was that like they were showing that anybody could be a good litigator when he's in the bar and he hears the other guy saying pretty much exactly what he had said in the beginning. I'm going to file like 9 different
Oh,
forms of
yes.
extensions and you're going to go blind for the next 9 months, all because of, something silly. It's just the exact same line that he had used before. So it's like he he had never actually set himself apart. He'd never made the argument by being in a court. So he needed to prove himself. So yes, he was a good litigator, but that doesn't alone make you a good lawyer.
Oh, but one thing I will say is that sort of on the Sorkin thing, just like
Hmm.
his Sorkin's morality, whatever that is. Um like even like Jessup, like doing those things, like um uh disobeying orders, covering things up, right?
Hmm.
Sorkin doesn't I don't think Sorkin has an implicit moral problem with those things.
Hmm.
He only has a problem with the thing he covered up, right?
Okay.
So let me just there's a story in The West Wing where one of the characters, one of the one of his characters that I would say he probably agrees most with, sort of his mouthpiece.
Hmm.
Um, so there's this whole thing about like space, like there's a secret space station or something like that that they don't want people to know about or something like that.
Hmm.
And one of the main characters' brother is up at that space station. And basically what it sounds like is they're going to let them die. They're going to let the space the um they'd rather let the um they'd rather let the astronauts die than let somebody like the Russians know that it exists,
Yeah.
because the Russians could help. I
Gotcha.
think that was the premise. Anyways, and he leaks it. He leaks the story.
Hmm.
So he's leaking classified material.
Yeah.
He's breaking the law. He's disobeying, orders. He's doing all of these things, and he basically just, he doesn't come forward. He doesn't, he has to be found out, right?
Yeah.
So obviously he sort of tried to cover his tracks. Um, but you know, and there's a lot of animosity between him and all the other characters because it's a scandal for the White House,
Hmm.
and he goes down. Um, but I'm just saying, I think that like that's a perfect example of why or what Aaron Sorkin actually. Dang it, Sorkin didn't write that. I just
No.
realized he didn't write it. It's his show and it's his characters, but he didn't write that part.
Okay.
Dang it. But it's sort of it's my what I would assume he would agree with based on the premise, because the writers that continued, I just realized that Sorkin only wrote like the first 4 seasons of The West Wing,
Gotcha.
which is why the first 4 are witty and the next 5 or whatever are depressing.
Yeah.
Like the first 4 are extremely witty, funny, but serious. Basically
Yeah.
watching A Few Good Men, but it's a TV show.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it just gets sort of grim. Like,
Hmm.
you know, just drama. It's straight drama all the time,
Yeah.
which makes it a kind of a sad and a frustrating story. Just not as fun to watch. I mean, you can probably make a good drama, but it's just if it's a nonstop drama, it just seems hard to endure. Anyways, but the point
Yeah.
is, I still think that Sorkin would probably agree with the sentiment that the character did. So what I'm saying is, even from Sorkin's perspective, I don't think, and a liberal's perspective, I don't think what you compose as the faults of Jessup, the main faults of Jessup,
Hmm.
would even necessarily matter to them if it wasn't like the code red. Like their problem is they don't like code reds. not
Right.
they don't like, you know, breaking the rules.
But I guess to counteract that, or the Jeffrey Barnes corporal that was on the stand, and he had the scene where Kevin Bacon brought out the Marine Corps manual and all that, saying, where am I told that I'm supposed to do code reds? He's directly like asked about wanting to do like, did you ever want to do a code red to um, the
Santiago.
ultimate, yeah, to Santiago? Is like, oh, absolutely. Like, he's not shown every part that he's in. Like, he's also the person who picks them up from the airport when they're in Cuba. Like, he's shown throughout as a very good, likable character, and he wanted to do the code reds. Like, they're not showing that people are evil in any way for wanting to do that, other than what Jessup orders from on high and then covers up.
I think that guy falls into his their good Republican, um, or his good Republican perspective.
Oh, and Cuba Gooding Jr. also said the same when he was on the stand.
Which one?
Cuba Gooding Jr., when he was on the stand,
What was his character?
he was just another person, or another soldier in that same division.
What I mean to say is, I'm saying Sorkin is good at making painting a picture, but also still having people make an alternative argument. That still doesn't change what he's trying to get you to believe. That's my point about it. He
Yeah,
has an agenda, but he knows that this is the thing, is that this is where propaganda becomes, like, in movies today, are so over the top.
mhm.
The point is they used to know sort of how to write it, where it was still propaganda, but it wasn't completely over the top.
Yeah, I guess I just like, so uh, by your point then, I guess it just doesn't make sense to me that like the propaganda is against self-discipline, like, or people disciplining one another in the military. Like, that just seems kind of trivial.
Yeah, I don't know if that was I think it's more along the lines of, we don't like this type of person, and those types of people do those types of things. So therefore we don't like those types of things either, especially when they're done by the people we don't like.
Right. I guess, again, just other than Mark and or Kendrick and Jessup, the other Marines that were shown, other than Santiago, were willing to do code reds, and none of them were portrayed as evil because of that.
I'm not saying, see, that's the thing, is they're not trying to make you think that everyone who believes in a certain thing is evil, because that wasn't their point in, like, the 90s and 80s. That's their
Yeah.
point now.
Yeah.
They've decided that you can no longer disagree with us now. But back then, they were just trying to inch you towards their opinion.
Yeah. And again, you very well might be right. I just personally don't see it that I
But this is
I'm
what
I'm not able to read as much into it.
but you talked about it this. You talked about how, like, we need to digest the media we watch, because it's not just the, like, overt evil things that they put into our movies today. It's also the small things that sort of go to undermine our society.
Right. And I still agree with that. Um, I just think that there's what you can read into something and what you definitely should read into something. And I think that ultimately, I think your argument is something that you can read into it, but not something that definitely is there that everyone has to recognize and reject as evil.
Yeah, I mean, I understand people will disagree with me. I'm just saying, that's my That's what I see, and I think you can that conclusion is not far fetched by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I understand and I can agree with that. I just disagree with the conclusion. That's all.
Okay, that's fine. Is there anything else that you want to bring up? Anything specific?
The only other thing I can think of is just how after everything was so good, so serious, so well done, they end with one of the cheesiest moments I've ever seen in a movie. When as Dawson is leaving and Kathy tells him you don't need a badge on your arm to have honor, turns around, ten hut, there's an officer on deck. Like it's just so bad and cheesy.
Well, it didn't even make sense either.
No, I it,
That like they're not on a deck. Like,
nope.
I mean, he could have just saluted him. That's not. It just felt like, Captain, my captain.
Yeah, eh, that was the one moment in the movie that was just like, oh my gosh, you just kind of jumped the shark when you just had such an absolutely electric scene in the courtroom. So well done. And okay, I do have to bring up the one thing I believe I brought up in our Tom Cruise episode is that during that scene, while they just filmed all of Tom Cruise's things and then all of Jack Nicholson, they didn't actually go back and forth. But when Jack Nicholson was not on the camera, he was behind it making faces at Tom Cruise trying to get him to crack.
Wait, sorry, say that again. What?
So when Tom Cruise was in front of the camera filming his scenes in the courtroom, Jack
Oh,
Nicholson was behind the camera making faces at him trying to get him to crack.
did he get him to crack at all?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, okay. That's such a like. That's such a What's the word? It's like what are those like fantastical creatures that sort of just mess around with you, like impish, kind of like impish
Yeah,
behavior.
I don't know specifically, but
Is that uh, anyways, people will understand what I mean. Like those like, just mystic, fantastical creatures that just mess around with you. That
yeah,
just sounds like he's the embodiment of that sort of mentality.
yeah,
That's funny. Well, so I mean, it's an enjoyable movie. I still think it's extremely politically charged, and it's one of those movies that I actually still watch. Like I'll still watch. Like I didn't have a real problem watching it.
hmm
It wasn't so bad. Like I think I have a harder time watching The West Wing nowadays
yeah.
than
That's
I
fair.
than I do A Few Good Men, because this is at least I don't know, like a decent portrayal. It's just it's just and I guess one of the good things is that it is kind of like Jack Nicholson is so psychotic that he feels like he's not even a real person, like that, like you're dealing with a maniac.
Yeah,
Though the problem
um,
with that is that I think that's sort of trying to paint people with a broad brush.
yeah. That's fair. But I will say I think that movie wise, because it's obviously different when you get to TV shows. Movie wise, I think this is a top three courtroom drama movie. The only one I can think of right now that I think is better is My Cousin Vinny.
Well, we might have to do a review of that too.
My Cousin Vinny is fantastic.
Yes, it's very good. It's just the contrast between the South and New York is just really hilarious. Herman
Yeah.
Munster's in it.
Oh, he is. Oh my
Yeah,
god, that's funny.
yeah, he's the judge.
Yep. Yeah, I didn't make that connection.
Yep. Well, anyways, all right, everyone. So, this next week, the Substack will be dropping. Um, so please, if you enjoyed this, especially like and subscribe. But also, if you are so inclined or capable, please support my work over uh, at Substack. So thank you, everyone. God bless.
Bye.